Who doesn't want to grow these big, beautiful hydrangeas for your cut flower farm? They are good sellers, they're easy to grow if you know what you're doing, and they can pump out 70 to 80 blooms off of a mature plant. So what's not to love about them? Well, they're actually a little bit confusing, and you need to know a few things about them to really understand them, to know how to grow them. If you want to learn more about that, let's just dive right in and try and explain it so we can all understand how to grow hydrangeas on our cut flower farm. My name's Ruth Ann from Abundant Blooms Flower Farm. I'm in my 6th year of flower farming. I focus mostly on selling flowers to florists. Today, we're going to be talking all about hydrangeas. So let's start at the beginning of the story. And I'm sorry if you can hear, there's like noise our neighbors are putting in a barn. So I hope that's not too distracting, but I'm just going to keep pressing on. It's also spitting rain, and I have a page protector over my nose because, you know, that's just the way life goes. So we're just going to roll with it. So let's start at the beginning. So I think it was either 2018 or 2019. I can't remember. I knew I wanted to be a flower farmer. I also love hydrangeas, and I bought, retail about, I don't know, 15 or 16 hydrangeas, and I put them along the fence line of our back little fenced in area of our yard. So I had a couple of limelights, some quick fires, and some like mini quick fires or something, and a couple other varieties that didn't do so well. They are like rock solid hydrangeas on my farm now. I have 3 limelight hydrangea plants that are mature, and they're 7 or 8 years old now, and they just crank out blooms. I mean, like 60, 70 blooms per plant. It's amazing, and they're gorgeous and beautiful. So how do I get that to happen? Because it's a little tricky. Hydrangeas can be confusing, actually very confusing. There are lots of different kinds of hydrangeas, and so understanding them for use on your cut flower farm is really vital to your success. And it's confusing, and I'm going to try and break it down for you, and I hope that's helpful. And I'm also going to just be sharing from my experience, which like I said, I grow in zone 6A. We used to be 5B. So we're relatively, northern. I'm in Michigan, but we're insulated by Lake Michigan. So we're actually in a relatively warm zone for how far north we are. There's a couple just really important things to understand about hydrangeas. Like I said, there's lots of different kinds. So there's certain hydrangeas that bloom on old wood and hydrangeas that bloom on new wood. This is vital to understand for the success of your growing hydrangeas on your cut flower farm. What does that even mean? So if something blooms on new wood, it means that the plant is going to send up new shoots of growth, and it's going to set buds on those new shoots in the spring, or like late, possibly like they'll start forming buds, early spring, and it's going to send up these new blooms, and then the plant is going to put the blooms on the new wood, on the new growth that comes from the hydrangea. It's going to put the blooms on that new wood. So these hydrangeas you need to prune in late winter or early spring. I usually do them in like February when we have a nice day. Now, hydrangeas can also bloom on old wood. Old wood means like this is old wood for this plant, like this is the growth from 2025, and then in 2026, if this hydrangea bloomed on old wood, which it does not, it would set buds on the old stem and then bloom on that. So if you prune that in late winter, you are cutting off all of your blooms for the season, and you will get 0 bloom. There's also newer hybrids that bloom on old and new wood. I'm not really going to get into that, but that is a thing, just so you know. You have to know what kind of hydrangea you're growing and when and how to prune it, because you can't just generalize them. Oh, it's a hydrangea, I need to do this. It's not that simple. The other thing is that hydrangeas that bloom on old wood are less hardy. And even though they're hardy to your zone, in my experience, hydrangeas that bloom on old wood, they can have their buds die off, particularly in the spring when they're swelling and kind of starting to get ready to mature. If you get a really cold spell or cold freeze, that can kill the blooms that are starting to produce. So the stuff that blooms on old wood is tricky, honestly, for me to grow here in Michigan. I'll just tell you a really brief story. I've tried to grow these types of hydrangeas, and I just have not had very good success. But on the lake shore, just 30 minutes from here, it's a warmer zone because Lake Michigan insulates. I mean, we're insulated by it too, but not as much as people like right on the lake. They're several degrees warmer. They're a whole zone warmer than I am, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away. And their hydrangeas are just better. I can tell they bloom earlier, and sometimes these old wood hydrangeas are amazing over there, and I have just had really poor success with them. And that can vary, like there's different varieties within that. I'm just trying to give generalizations, but one year I was at a friend's house on the lake shore in Holland, Michigan, and her blue, macrophylla hydrangeas were absolutely stunning. And I was like, oh, they're so beautiful. And she said, yeah, this year they're great. Some years they're great and other years they're not. So even here, like, they're hardy to our zone. It's not going to kill the plant, but it might kill the blooms in early spring and you won't get any blooms. That's why they're so hard. They're not straightforward. Some are like this, some are like that, and they have all different needs and varieties, and so you have to know what you're talking about. So we are going to get into this. I have this handout. It looks like this, and this is called Hydrangeas Demystified. This is from Proven Winners. I actually got this from Spring Meadow, where I buy all of my plugs from, all of my woody plugs from, or where I've gotten most of them. I shouldn't say all, where I've gotten a lot of them. They gave me this when I was there. This is very helpful. So it's going to show you, why isn't my hydrangea blooming? And the guy said, that is the most common question we get, like, period. Why isn't my hydrangea blooming? And so there's different kinds of hydrangeas. So we're going to talk about smooth and panicle, climbing, oak leaf, big leaf, or mountains. And some of them, bloom on old wood, and some of them bloom on new wood, and different things. So some of them, if they don't have enough sunlight, they're not going to bloom, right? So just realize, if you struggle with understanding hydrangeas, you are not alone. First, we're going to talk about hydrangea arborescens. This would be things like the Incredible series, the Invincible series, and this is a smooth hydrangea that blooms on old wood. That's one variety that I'm going to talk about. Another one is the Hydrangea macrophylla. This is like the Let's Dance series, the Cascade series, and these bloom on new wood. And then there's the Hydrangea paniculata. This is probably what most of us are more familiar with. This is like the limelight hydrangea or the limelight prime, and then the quickfire hydrangea. So the quickfire hydrangea and the limelight. Side note, if you have limelights, they were patented and the patent is expired, so you can actually legally propagate limelight hydrangeas. Not limelight prime, but the patent for limelights has expired, and you're welcome to propagate them. Haven't done that yet, but if you're into that. Okay, other hydrangeas include oak leaf hydrangea, mountain hydrangea, and more like climbing hydrangeas. I just can't get into everything. I'm going to talk about the ones that I grow. We might be getting rained out here. Okay, guys, I'm back. So real life, I got rained out there, but you know what? My kids are occupied, and this is the time I have to create this video. So here we are, new location. Adapt and overcome, my friends. That is the method. Now let's go into like varieties and like what I grow. I've purchased most of my hydrangeas, I think all of them, from Spring Meadow, which is here in Grand Haven, but you can buy from them. They're wholesale only. They ship to Canada. Hopefully that's helpful for Canadians. This is what they will look like when they come. Like, a tray is 16, so this is half a tray. And there's actually not all of them in here, but this is about how big they are. These have to get planted. This is a cascading fairy trail something hydrangea. This is what they'll look like. Someone recently messaged me and said, I just got an order from Spring Meadow. Wow, they're a lot smaller than I was anticipating. Yeah, they're not big. This is actually putting up new growth. They trim them and keep them very small for shipping purposes, right? So that's what they'll look like when you buy them in 4-inch pot from them. You can actually also get them in 18s, which are even smaller, a little bit, not too much smaller. That's what mine have looked like. This is what they've started like, except for those first ones that I planted that I bought from a nursery that were like in gallon pots or something. When you're purchasing, you're going to have to really think about different things. You're going to have to watch out because hydrangeas come in all different sizes. There's really small ones that only grow like 1.5 to 2 feet tall, which they're breeding for smaller and smaller, more compact. So you don't want those. I have some, I can't remember what they're called. They're like the mini quickfires, and they don't grow very big, and they don't give me long stems. They're very branchy and more compact. I have 2 of them. They're on either side of the gate in my fence. I bought them a long time ago. They're fine. They're pretty. I don't harvest them. I don't sell them. Just be careful of that. Just a note about how do you get them. You can control the bloom size, how big the heads of the blooms are, and you can control how long the stems are to a degree based on the variety you're growing, all with your pruning. I have a video all about pruning that I did in late winter, so go check that video out. That will explain how I prune them. I will link to that. Let's talk about the ones that I grow. So I mostly grow the paniculatas, so that would be like limelight, limelight prime, quick fires. Those are the old ones that I have. And then I also have the Invincible Spirit 2, which is what I was standing by earlier. The green ones, they're really great. They actually start out pink and change to green over to, they age to that green. And those are planted in 2022. So I've harvested a lot off of them. So just to give you an idea of how long it takes to go from this to that for that variety. Some hydrangeas like oak leaves, they take a lot longer to mature. So just realize, like, just because that particular hydrangea looks like that after, 3 years. That might not be exactly what every hydrangea looks like after 3 years. Last year, I ordered a whole bunch of stuff, which I did a video on that, like the 900 shrubs I added to my farm. So if you want to know exactly what I got, you can check out that Woody video. So last year I planted over 100 of them. None of them are producing this year as far as like getting sellable stems, but I planted limelight primes, quick fires, cascading, a lace one. So I've added a bunch. I'm not going to really discuss those because I haven't sold them or grown them. They're not mature, but I did add about 100 hydrangeas to my farm last year based on the demand for the hydrangeas that I'm currently growing. Growing hydrangeas. So hydrangea means water vessel or something close to that in Greek. So they need water, but they don't like wet feet. So don't leave them in bog, but you have to water them. So mine are on a drip tape, like orchard tubing. And so they get water every single day. And they need that. They're like in a specific area all together. They're right, most of them are right over there, and they need water. So water them. How long does it take to bloom? Like I said, mine start like this. And then it just depends on the hydrangea. Usually in the first year, there's absolutely no blooms unless you're buying like a gallon pot or something from the nursery. And then the second year, there might be blooms. I had some on my Invincible Spirit twos for sure. I had some blooms. And then in the third year, mine are amazing and producing lots. They do take a couple of years. Some people like to buy them in gallon pots from nursery because they will mature more quickly. So for some people, it's worth it, or they like sell the blooms and pay for the plant that way. So that's great if you have a way to do that. That can also work, particularly if you're just looking for a couple. Okay, so just real life, I was editing that video about hydrangeas and I realized that I didn't talk about harvest and post-harvest care. Actually, I did, but it got cut off. So back here, it's a new day for harvesting for hydrangeas. It's very important that you harvest them first thing in the morning. In the cool of the day, you need to harvest them, put them into deep buckets of water with hydrator solution in them, and then get them right in the cooler. So what my process looks like is I have an order for hydrangeas. Very first thing on Monday morning, I go out, I harvest them, usually in my gorilla cart, unless I have a really big order. I get them in the right solution and I get them in my cooler. I don't go harvest something else. That's when you want to harvest them. The next question is, what's the correct harvest stage? You want the florets to be like almost fully open, like all the way to the top of the panicle of the hydrangea. They can be close to being fully open, but you want them as much open as possible. I feel like every year I'm cutting them immature because I have a florist that's asking me for them, and so I'm trying to get them everything I can. But you really want the panicles as open as possible to the top, preferably waiting until the entire thing is open, or until all the little panicles on the top are open, and then you can harvest them. You can also harvest them all the way to when they start to change color, and they'll actually hold and last longer that well. They're not a super long lasting flower when cut in the completely white stage. They're mostly for events, I find, but event florists know how to work with them. They put them in a bathtub full of water or whatever. They have different tricks to hydrating them. So they're definitely useful for events and people really want them in their design. So that's harvest and post-harvest care. Sun or shade? Well, that actually depends on your location. I know they're tricky, I'm telling you. I grow like limelights and quick fires all in full sun, but I know places in the south where it gets a lot hotter, they can't do that. They have to have partial shade. Like I know Lisa Mason Ziegler, many of you are probably familiar with her. She lives in Virginia. She grows them in afternoon shade, but they have to have morning sun because if they don't have some sun, they're not going to set buds, or at least most of the varieties won't. So it's tricky. You got to really know what you're buying and what you're selling it for and how to grow it. So do your research. Hopefully this video helps. So like here's a quick fire hydrangea and you see how it's like getting brown on the back. This is actually the top. So they get like spotted from the sun, like sunburned. And then here's some, this is a limelight. These are small limelights. Oh, there's a spider in there. See, they get these spots on them. And that's from the sun. So if you grow them under shade cloth in the north, that helps prevent those spots on them. I don't have that, but I actually set up my new hydrangea grove so that in the future, when the plants are mature, I can add a shade structure over them. That's my like theory, possibly. At least I have the ability to do that. And I know that Green Park Nurseries up in Canada, Carl, their family grows a lot of botanical hydrangeas and they grow them under a shade structure. But the catch is they don't put the shade up until July-ish, at some point in July, because they still need sun to bloom and to set their buds. You know, if you see these pristine flowers and you're thinking, how do they keep the spots off their hydrangeas? Well, there may be more to the story, but they don't brown like that initially. So for a couple weeks, they're just pristine blooms. I would say like 1 to 2 weeks, like my limelights are just these pristine white blooms. So if you can pretty much sell them all in that time period, you know, you don't have to worry about it. But it would give you, you know, these are obviously beautiful. They're starting to turn pink. And this is lovely, except some people really don't like the brown spots on them, which I can kind of understand that. Some florists don't mind that though, and they like it. So that brings me to my next point of, if you are growing hydrangeas and selling them to florists, you must be a very good communicator because the hydrangeas change drastically, actually. So one week they'll be pristinely white and gorgeous, and then they'll start turning to pink. And then, like, this used to be pure white, and now it's not white at all, right? So they want to know what they're getting. And if a florist is having a wedding and they're expecting white hydrangeas and they get pink ones, they're not going to be very happy. You know, they may not be able to use them. So I try to be really good communicator. I've definitely like learned and could be a better communicator, that I try to update my pictures like every week, like what does the hydrangea currently look like, and then just also be aware they will go from pristinely white to changing and aging very quickly. Like within a week they could look totally different. These are the invincible spirits, these hydrangeas, which these are dried and they're not even as nice as they were, but these are pink and then turn to like a blushy with green undertones and then turn completely green. So, I mean, they're just like a totally different flower. So you just have to be a really good communicator, update your pictures, and just be very clear about what does the hydrangea look like right now because it will change. So, I mean, I think they're a great addition to a flower farm, particularly if you're selling to florists like I do, because they need them for big installs and weddings. I think I mentioned this earlier, that I had a wedding florist that ordered 300 hydrangeas for one event earlier this season. So there, you definitely can get some big orders. I had a big order last year. I mean, I couldn't even fulfill it all, partly because it was too early in the season, but I got her everything I could. But like, she would have taken like 400 hydrangeas, and they just weren't mature enough yet. They can be a really great addition because they're very sought after by wedding and event florists. And you can get lots of blooms per plant, so that's another reason why they're great for a flower farm. So even if you're a small flower farm and you just want 3 limelight hydrangeas, I literally have 3 mature limelight hydrangeas, and I've gotten hundreds of blooms off of them. Several hundred, like maybe 150 big ones and like 150 small ones. 300 blooms off of 3 plants that are mature, like they're 7, 8 years old. That can be amazing for your space. They come in lots of different shapes and colors and sizes, and they can have different bloom times. They can be dried. So there's just a lot of benefits to having them on your flower farm. I hope that's given you more information to see if this is a helpful cut flower for your flower farm. If you have a particular hydrangea that you really love, I'd love to know what it is, because I'm kind of always on the hunt. There's some really cool, unique ones. So if you have a cool one and you want to share, I'd love to hear in the comments what your experience is. I just want to say this as an encouragement to other newer flower farmers. So last year was the first year I was really selling the Invincible Spirit 2s, like the green blush ones. I didn't sell very many of them, and I was kind of disappointed. And I planted all these other ones, and you're thinking, how am I going to sell these all? You know, I planted more and I can't even sell the 16 that I have. And this year I've sold so many of them. And I think part of it is the florists just have to get used to you and the hydrangeas and knowing that you have them. And so once you've established these relationships with a florist, they remember that you have them. And the same thing has happened with my 9-bark. I have sold more 9-bark and smoke bush this year. In fact, I'm like selling completely out of it. And I have 16 mature 9-bark and smoke bush of multiple varieties, and I'm like selling out of them. Well, I didn't sell out of them last year. And so I guess my encouragement is, it takes time. It takes time to establish these relationships. It takes time to grow the woodies. And don't be discouraged if you didn't sell all your hydrangeas and you have like 100 left on the plant or something, or 200, because it's about the long game. It's about establishing the relationship. It's about having really good quality. It's about maintaining these connections, growing more connections, becoming a better farmer, becoming a better marketer to your florists, and having a really good product and reputation, and making it easy for them. So I've been selling into the Chicago Flower Market for the last couple weeks, and the girl that's in charge of the market there messaged me when she got my limelight hydrangeas and said, your hydrangeas are 10 out of 10 amazing. All the rest of your stuff is great too. But And then she like put the hydrangeas, like, look at this stem length. Like they were amazing. Well, I've gotten better at pruning them, so I have a better product. I'm better at growing them. I have more mature plants. I have a system of harvesting them, and I mean, I'm pretty good at it now. I wasn't real great at it at the beginning. So anyway, that's my encouragement to you. Here's my little hydrangea growth. So you can see how small this hydrangea plant is. It was planted last August. They're actually blooming, but then there's a whole bunch of them that are not blooming too. These are blooming and they're beautiful, really beautiful, but they're super, I mean, what is this, like, I don't know, 15 inches tall maybe. It's kind of lovely to see these little, look at these little guys. And this one, see, this one didn't really get any blooms. Maybe it got this like tiny little bud here. So if you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you check out my video about 6 woody shrubs I planted in 2022. One of them is a hydrangea. So if you're interested in this or woody shrubs, you can check out that video. It's just got some really helpful information in it. And don't forget to download my free tips for selling flowers to florists and get on my email list. I have an exciting interview lined up. You're going to want to be on my email list, so you'll be the first to know about some of these things. So check that out. And otherwise, thanks for watching. That's all for today. See you next time.